Welcome. Today we're embarking on an analysis that focuses not on the epic quest of Frodo Baggins, but on the almost impossible industrial feat that happened behind it.
Right.
We're going to be dissecting the production data you sent us on The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
That's absolutely the mission. We are moving past the narrative itself to really analyze the sheer, unprecedented scale of the film's production history.
And not just that, the revolutionary approach to casting this massive ensemble, its explosive cultural and commercial impact when it landed in 2001.
And ultimately, how it cemented its enduring status in cinematic history today.
The source material we have is just so rich. It covers everything from these, minute anecdotes about how the cast bonded,
And director's notes on design philosophy.
all the way up to these truly monumental global box office figures and the long-term critical recognition this film garnered.
And when we talk about The Fellowship of the Ring, we are talking about more than just the first installment of a successful trilogy based on J.R.R. Tolkien's 1954 novel.
No, it's much bigger than that.
Yeah. Crucially, this was a singular, massive undertaking, directed by Peter Jackson, financed by New Line Cinema, but entirely shot and edited in his native New Zealand. And here's the key industrial insight.
All three films were produced concurrently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That simultaneous production model alone was a huge financial and logistical gamble that really set a precedent for blockbuster filmmaking.
Okay, let's unpack the sheer genesis of Middle-earth, because the creation of this world was not a quick sprint. It was an organizational and artistic marathon that began, long before the actors ever set foot on a soundstage.
The commitment level from Peter Jackson was extraordinary. He began storyboarding the entire three-film series with Christian Rivers in August of 1997.
August 97. So if you look at the timeline, that's 2 full years before principal photography even started in October 1999.
2 full years. Jackson wasn't just planning a movie, he was laying the visual foundations for what would become a decade of cinema.
In parallel to that 2-year planning phase, the physical world was being constructed.
In Wellington, right? Yes, at Weta Workshop, under the direction of Richard Taylor. And they weren't just told to make fantastical armor and props. Jackson gave them a very specific and frankly genius directive.
Which was?
Middle-earth needed to be plausible and believable. He instructed the team to approach the design process as if they were studying genuine historical cultures.
That historical mandate, that's the key to why the visual style works so well, isn't it?
It is. It meant that every piece of armor, every building, every weapon had to conform to an internal logic, often based on real-world history and anthropology.
And this vision was immediately expanded when 2 giants of Tolkien illustration joined the team, Alan Lee and John Howe.
Right. They came on board in November 1997, translating their famous 2-dimensional illustrations from the books into a 3-dimensional reality.
The details on their specific contributions are fascinating, as they really reveal the architectural philosophy of Middle-earth.
They too. Alan Lee, for instance, was instrumental in designing key locations like Rivendell, Isengard, Moria, and Lothlorien.
And he consciously incorporated the flowing, organic lines of Art Nouveau into the designs for the elves, giving their spaces that natural, ethereal feel.
Exactly. And in contrast, he utilized strong geometry and rigid structures when designing for the dwarfs. It reflects their subterranean, organized, and, structured existence.
It's an immediate visual shorthand. It tells you everything about the culture occupying that space without a single word of dialogue.
Precisely. And John Howe, while he contributed to the beloved look of Bag End and the monumental Argonath statues, he specialized specifically in the design of the characters' armor and weaponry.
And his expertise came from having studied historical armor extensively.
It did. And this speaks directly back to Jackson's initial mandate for believability. It's a level of commitment to verifiable, logical detail that just redefined the budget and scale required for a successful fantasy epic.
Speaking of scale, the numbers related to costuming are genuinely mind-boggling. They really reveal the true industrial cost of this pursuit of realism.
They absolutely do. And Gila Dixon, the costume designer, led a team of 40 seamstresses who created an astonishing 19,000 costumes in total for the trilogy.
19,000. That is immense. But the real insight here isn't just the volume, is it? It's the duplication.
Right. To achieve authenticity, they couldn't just create one hero costume per actor. We see from the sources that they created 40 different costume versions for each actor and their doubles.
40 versions. So why? What was the thinking there?
Because they had to ensure every costume could be worn out, aged, distressed, and battle damaged to look authentic, not, fresh out of the wardrobe department.
So that is the core insight for the industry then. This level of duplication and deliberate degradation established authenticity as a primary, non-negotiable cost in high fantasy.
It fundamentally redefined what studios had to invest in realism. You needed multiple backups and variations for every single stage of the journey.
And geographically, this entire massive effort was tied to New Zealand. The production utilized over 150 different locations.
Over 150. Places like the Arrow River stood in for the fort of Bruinen, and the lush, idyllic Matamata farm region became the permanent physical set for Hobbiton.
Which is still standing today, right? A major tourist destination.
It is. And the logistical complexity of moving a project of this size, hundreds of cast and crew, plus 19,000 costumes and countless props across New Zealand's diverse and often remote landscapes is a feat of organization rarely matched in cinema.
I mean, you're talking about everything from the Wakapop ski field being transformed into Mordor's prologue scenes,
to the Mavora Lakes serving as the backdrop for the final Parth Galen scenes. It required the coordination of nearly every government and logistical agency in the country.
Okay, so moving from the building of the world to the forming of the core emotional unit of the film, the Fellowship itself. The genius here wasn't just who Jackson cast, but how he intentionally engineered them into a coherent, believable unit.
That forging process was incredibly deliberate. 6 weeks before filming began on October 11th, 1999, the principal actors were thrown into crucial pre-production training.
This included intense sword-fighting lessons with the renowned choreographer Bob Anderson,
as well as rigorous writing and boating exercises. And this wasn't just physical rehearsal for stunt work.
Right. Jackson's two primary goals, according to the director's notes, were, 1, to create tangible, real-life on-screen chemistry through shared experience.
And 2, to help the largely international cast acclimate to life in Wellington, New Zealand. They were forced to rely on each other, both on and off set.
So it was effectively a 6-week summer camp designed to build genuine camaraderie that would just automatically translate when they performed together.
That's a great way to put it. And an additional unique element was the specialized linguistic training they received,
to ensure they could properly pronounce Tolkien's complex verses and the Elvish language.
That commitment to both physical and linguistic authenticity provided a truly cohesive, unified performance across the entire ensemble.
And we know this bond was permanent. After the shoot was completed, the 9 primary cast members playing the Fellowship, they all received a matching tattoo.
The Elvish symbol for the number 9. I love that anecdote.
But there was an exception.
We have to note the single exception. John Rhys Davies, who played Gimli, he did not get the tattoo himself.
So who got it?
His stunt double received it instead. And that little detail just perfectly sums up the intense, sometimes all-encompassing level of commitment required from everyone, even down to the stand-ins and doubles.
So if we look at the casting process itself, it's this fascinating series of triumphs and near misses that truly could have altered cinematic history.
It really could have. Take Elijah Wood, who played Frodo Baggins. He was the very first actor cast way back in July of 1999.
He was a fan of The Hobbit, right? And he really invested in getting the role. He sent in an audition tape dressed as Frodo, reading lines from the book.
He did, and he was selected from 150 hopefuls for that main Hobbit role.
Now, contrast that with the story of Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, that's a famous one. He was called into audition, but due to a massive error, his agency completely miscommunicated the direction.
And he ended up using an American accent when reading for the part.
Right. And just like that, it was over. Small miscommunications can truly change the trajectory of these huge franchises forever.
And then there's Gandalf. The sources reveal that numerous famous actors declined the part of Gandalf the Grey.
So many. The most famous being Sean Connery.
And he turned it down because he didn't understand the plot. I mean, that has to be one of the biggest what-ifs in modern film history.
It absolutely is. And the offer he was given was huge. We're talking $10 million per film plus 15% of the gross.
Wow. And he declined because he just couldn't grasp the story.
That's what the sources claim. It wasn't just him, though. Patrick Stewart disliked the script and declined. Anthony Hopkins and Christopher Plummer also turned down the role.
So the producers were clearly seeking an established, classic British actor with immense gravitas.
And they found him in Ian McKellen. He ultimately took the role, but he had to navigate a complicated 2-month overlap with his shooting schedule for X-Men.
And McKellen grounded his performance deeply in the source material, which is a great detail for fans. He based his accent on a historical recording of Tolkien himself reading The Hobbit.
What's fascinating about McKellen's experience, though, is the technical reality of the shoot versus the emotional truth. The sources mention that McKellen didn't actually spend much time directly with the actors playing the hobbits.
How is that possible?
He primarily worked with their scale doubles due to the intensive use of forced perspective shooting techniques.
Okay, let's pause and quickly clarify that for the listener, because it's central to the film's illusion. Forced perspective.
Right, of course. So forced perspective is a visual technique where objects or people appear farther away, closer, larger, or smaller than they actually are. It's an old camera trick.
So in this case, to make the hobbits look tiny next to Gandalf, they would just position the hobbit actors much further away from the camera.
Exactly. Even though they appeared to be sitting side by side with McKellen, this allowed them to shoot the scenes without using overly complicated digital effects for simple size differences.
That technical challenge is a crucial distinction between the emotional performance and the production reality.
It really is. Now, moving to Aragorn, the casting of Viggo Mortensen is one of the trilogy's most famous success stories, but it was born purely out of necessity.
A near disaster, really.
It was. Mortensen was a late replacement for Stuart Townsend, who was deemed too young once filming had actually begun.
And just like Gandalf, Aragorn had a line of famous near misses. Daniel Day-Lewis turned the part down twice.
Twice. Once at the beginning of pre-production and again later. Nicolas Cage declined due to family obligations. Russell Crowe was also considered, but he reportedly believed Jackson wasn't interested in casting him.
So how did Viggo get the role?
It was executive producer Mark Ordesky who saw him in a play, but the true push came from Mortensen's son, Henry.
Right. His son was a huge fan of the books and convinced his father to take the role.
And this was a true rush job. Mortensen read the book on the plane ride to New Zealand, immediately received a crash course in fencing, and began filming almost instantly.
Starting with the iconic scenes on Weathertop.
The Weathertop sequence. And his commitment immediately became legendary amongst the crew. He was noted for patching up his own costume and carrying his sword around with him, even when he was off camera.
And this brings us to another piece of jargon worth clarifying. He carried his hero sword.
Right. So a hero proper sword is the high-quality, meticulously detailed version. It's designed for close-ups and on-screen handling.
In contrast to stunt versions, which are made of rubber or plastic for safety, or background versions, which are cheaper and less detailed.
Exactly. Mortensen treated the hero sword as if it were an extension of himself, which really shows that deep immersion into the character and the role.
And we can't forget Sean Astin as Samwise Gamgee. He also brought a personal connection that mirrored his on-screen character.
He did. Having recently become a father himself, Astin bonded with the 18-year-old Elijah Wood in a sort of protective manner.
Which directly reflects Sam's intensely loyal relationship with Frodo. This authentic chemistry, born from real-life circumstances, was a profound benefit to the film.
It really was. And we should also note the nearly cast actors for supporting roles. Orlando Bloom, who eventually played Legolas, initially auditioned for Faramir.
The role that David Wenham later secured.
And then there's Christopher Lee, who embodied the tragic Saruman the White. He was a major devoted fan of Tolkien. He read the book once a year and had actually met Tolkien in real life.
He originally wanted the role of Gandalf, but was judged too old for the physical rigors of that specific part.
Right, which required extensive writing and physical movement. And Jackson's avoidance of certain high-profile names is also instructive about the creative philosophy here.
You mean David Bowie?
David Bowie, yes. He expressed interest in playing Elrond, but Jackson declined. He felt that colliding a famous, beloved character and a famous star would feel, as he put it, slightly uncomfortable and might break the audience's immersion.
That decision reveals Jackson's dedication to making sure the characters, rather than the stars, were the driving force behind the world's credibility.
The plausibility, it all comes back to that.
And finally, we can't overlook the absolutely revolutionary use of motion capture in this film. Andy Serkis, playing Gollum, pioneered performance techniques that would go on to reshape modern cinema.
He did. Circus was initially hesitant because his face would not appear on screen, but he ultimately accepted the role despite some skepticism from others in the industry.
Jackson himself wasn't even entirely sure if Gollum could be successfully portrayed with motion capture performance integrated into the live-action world at that time.
And though Gollum's full digital appearance is saved for the sequels, Circus's work starts right here in Fellowship. He appears briefly in the prologue via voice and motion capture.
And then only partially visible, just his eyes and nose, in the Mines of Moria sequence. It marks the first subtle integration of what would become a major cinematic revolution.
Let's transition now to the vital layer that truly brought Middle-earth to life. The audio aesthetics, particularly the score, and how the filmmakers navigated the difficult choices of adapting such a beloved and dense literary work for the screen.
The soundscape of Middle-earth, composed by Howard Shore, is arguably as critical to the film's success as the visuals.
I would agree. Shore created a score that required a monumental combination of global talent. The New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, the London Philharmonic Orchestra, the renowned London Voices, the London Oratory School Schola,
And even a Maori Samoan choir.
that tremendous layering of global musical resources gives the score its unique depth and thematic range. It ensures that different cultures, from the Shire to Rivendell to the darkness of Mordor, each have their own distinct auditory identity.
Adding to this, the film featured contributions from Enya, who composed and sang 2 original songs.
The ethereal Aneurin and the emotional end title theme, May It Be. Shore also composed In Dreams, a beautifully haunting track, which was sung by Edward Ross of the London Oratory School Schola.
And the score was recognized not just by fans, but critically, resulting in an Academy Award win for Best Original Score, highlighting the profound importance of this musical element to the film's overall impact.
It was essential.
Now, on to adaptation philosophy. When you condense a classic of this length and density into a 3-hour film, changes are mandatory.
Absolutely. Jackson, along with co-writers Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, made numerous adjustments. They primarily prioritized pacing and immediate dramatic character development over strict textual adherence.
Jackson himself stated his main desire was to focus the film primarily on Frodo and the Ring, which he called the backbone of the story.
And that focus meant a consistent philosophical choice: cinematic amplification and visual drama over exposition or literary subtlety.
Which immediately led to condensation and omission. The famous, often meandering events involving characters like Tom Bombadil were condensed or omitted entirely from the beginning of the film to streamline Frodo's journey.
And they had to handle the immense span of time in the book very carefully. In the source material, there is a sprawling 17-year gap between Gandalf leaving the ring with Frodo and his eventual return to the Shire.
That was greatly compressed for the film's timeline, to maximize narrative urgency.
It had to be. And one of the most significant structural shifts impacting the emotional conclusion of the Fellowship of the Ring was the climactic change at Amon Hen.
You're talking about Boromir's death.
Exactly. The Uruk-hai ambush and the dramatic death of Boromir, which actually opens the 2 towers in the books, were moved to the conclusion of Fellowship in the film.
That decision was vital for the theatrical experience, wasn't it? It provided Fellowship with a massive, decisive, and linear climax.
It did. Without that shift, the film might have ended on a much slower, more ambiguous note. Moving that tragic action ensured the first installment concluded with definitive action, sacrifice, and immediate consequences for the audience.
We also see directorial choices altering the tone in sequences like the journey through Moria.
We do. In the book, when the Fellowship is defeated on the Cardress Road, Gandalf reluctantly advocates for the Moria path, expressing a slim hope that the dwarves might still be there.
But the film alters this tone significantly to provide clear visual foreshadowing and dramatic tension. Jackson chose to show Gandalf actively resisting the Moria plan,
Which is much more dramatic. Saruman is even shown to be aware of Gandalf's dark history with the Balrog, specifically revealing an illustration of the creature in one of his books. This immediately signals danger to the audience.
Furthermore, the immediate tone upon entering Moria is different. In the book, the dwarf's fate is realized only slowly upon reaching Balin's tomb.
But in the film, the realization that the dwarves are dead is immediate. The corpses are shown almost instantly upon entering Moria. It just heightens the tension and sense of creeping dread for the audience.
And then there's the famous scene of Pippin alerting the orcs. In the novel, he tosses a mere pebble down the well and hears only a faint hammer, tapping in the distance.
A very different feel. In the film, he knocks an entire skeleton down, which drags a chain and a bucket, creating this incredible noise and immediately triggering a massive attack.
It's a perfect example of Jackson choosing cinematic amplification, using sound and exaggerated visual action to replace pages of internal anticipation and monologue.
And these adaptation choices, while potentially controversial for purists, were necessary for cinematic pacing and showed Jackson's dedication to making thematic points clear and immediate, using the tools of film visual and auditory spectacle to replace the subtlety of prose.
Moving beyond the creative process, let's explore the immediate and massive shockwave this film sent through the industry. The Fellowship of the Ring wasn't just a critical darling. It was an instant box office titan and a major cultural phenomenon right out of the gate.
It proved that high fantasy was now a major cinematic genre.
Its commercial success was immediate and undeniable. The film grossed $868.4 million worldwide during its original theatrical run.
And following reissues, that figure has climbed to $887.8 million. At the time of its release, it was the second highest grossing film of 2001.
But perhaps more profoundly, it instantly became the fifth highest grossing film of all time worldwide.
That is an incredible ranking for a fantasy film, a genre that most studios considered commercially risky, if not box office poison, before this.
It fundamentally changed the greenlighting process for high-concept genre fare in Hollywood.
Without a doubt. Domestically, it set new records. On its opening day, December 19, 2001, it brought in $18.2 million in the U.S. and Canada.
And that set a specific December opening record, beating the previously successful Ocean's 11.
And its dominance was absolutely global. It confirmed the universal appeal of Tolkien's world when translated with this level of production quality. It opened at #1 in 29 international markets.
And in its first 15 days, it had amassed over $362.2 million globally.
It set a record opening day in Australia, beating the previous record held by Star Wars, Episode I, The Phantom Menace.
Beating Star Wars in any capacity at that time, especially in a major international market like Australia, that was monumental news.
It was. It also set massive opening weekend records in Germany with 1.5 million admissions and in Spain. And culturally, it even surpassed the legendary box office dominance of Titanic, becoming the highest-grossing film in Denmark at the time.
The audience engagement figures really underline this cultural moment. Box Office Mojo estimates that the film sold over 54 million tickets in the U.S. and Canada in its initial theatrical run.
That's volume. That confirms that this was a must-see event, not just a high-grossing film driven by a niche audience.
And the marketing around the film was revolutionary, capitalizing on the nascent age of high-speed internet before streaming dominated.
It really was. The special featurette trailer released in April 2000 was downloaded over 1.7 million times within its first 24 hours.
And it shattered the previous record held by, once again, Star Wars, Episode I, The Phantom Menace.
That level of instant digital demand was the clearest signal possible to the industry. The audience was intensely ready for this material. It proved that word of mouth and genuine fan excitement, amplified by new digital channels, could translate directly into massive commercial success.
The film's success continued long after its theatrical run closed, transitioning smoothly into the home media market.
Yes, the theatrical DVD release in August 2002 became the best-selling DVD release at the time, selling 14.5 million copies.
Holding that record in the early 2000s when DVD sales were booming, that was a major milestone, though it was eventually surpassed by Finding Nemo.
And this leads us to the extended version, which became a unique cultural event in itself. Released in November 2002, it added 30 minutes of new material, plus new special effects and music, totaling 228 minutes.
This wasn't just a basic re-release. It redefined what special editions could be and established a high expectation for fans demanding more comprehensive versions of complex epics.
The extended edition helped solidify the idea that these films were investments for fans, providing substantial added value and ensuring unparalleled longevity in the home media market.
And that further fueled the financial success of the ongoing trilogy. The financial dominance was mirrored by near-universal critical praise, establishing the film's enduring cinematic legacy almost immediately.
Absolutely. The film was instantly acclaimed by both critics and fans as a landmark achievement, not just in filmmaking generally, but specifically within the fantasy genre, which often struggled to achieve mainstream critical respect at this level.
Critics praised its visual effects, the overall performances, Jackson's direction, and the musical score.
And looking at the critical consensus, the numbers tell the story. 92% approval on Rotten Tomatoes, a high score of 92 out of 100 on Metacritic.
And audiences polled by CinemaScore gave it a strong A grade. This confirms that the film satisfied both expert critics and the mass audience.
It did. Critics focus heavily on the meticulous construction. Colin Kennedy of Empire magazine gave it 5 stars, calling it impeccably cast and constructed with both care and passion.
Which echoes Jackson's initial mandate for authenticity and the intense pre-production efforts.
The Washington Post praised the cast extensively, singling out the performances of 2 key figures. They described Viggo Mortensen as Strider as a revelation, not to mention downright gorgeous.
And praised Ian McKellen as Gandalf, noting he carried the burden of thousands of years of fighting evil and was positively Merlin-esque.
Richard Corliss of Time magazine praised Peter Jackson's overall achievement, stating that the film achieved what the best fairy tales do: the creation of an alternate world, plausible and persuasive, where the young, and not only the young, can lose themselves.
That cyclical feedback loop, from Jackson's initial instruction for plausibility to the critic recognizing it, is really remarkable.
And the legacy is sealed not just by positive reviews, but by its inclusion in major historical records. In 2007, the American Film Institute named The Fellowship of the Ring one of the 100 greatest American films in history.
Which is so significant because, at that time, this fantasy epic was officially categorized alongside classics like Citizen Kane and Casablanca. It was both the most recent film and the only film released in the 21st century to make that prestigious list.
That speaks volumes about the immediate impact and perceived lasting power of the work.
And 2 decades later, its historical status was reaffirmed. In 2021, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress.
A designation given to works deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, cementing its place in American cinematic heritage.
And its contemporary relevance continues. The New York Times, in a 2025 ranking of the 100 best movies of the 21st century, ranked The Fellowship of the Ring at number 87.
This shows it holds up not just as a historical milestone, but as a crucial piece of modern cinema still being judged against its contemporaries.
Finally, we have to look at the awards. At the 74th Academy Awards, the film received a remarkable 13 nominations.
13, including high-profile nods for Best Picture, Best Director for Peter Jackson, Best Supporting Actor for Ian McKellen, and Best Adapted Screenplay.
While it did not take home the major top categories that year, its 4 wins were in absolutely crucial technical and aesthetic areas: Best Cinematography, Best Makeup, Best Original Score, and Best Visual Effects.
And that visual effects win for Jim Rygeel, Randall William Cook, Richard Taylor, and Mark Stetson directly acknowledged the groundbreaking nature of Wada's simultaneous large-scale digital work.
Beyond the Oscars, the film swept up honors across multiple ceremonies. At the British Academy Film Awards, or BAFTAs, it won 5 awards,
including the coveted Best Film, Best Direction, the David Lean Award, and Best Special Visual Effects.
And it dominated genre and audience-voted awards, confirming its beloved status.
It won the 2002 Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation, the Saturn Award for Best Fantasy Film, and the Empire Reader's Best Film Award. The volume and diversity of its accolades confirm its status as both a critical success and a beloved cultural phenomenon.
And Ian McKellen also secured a Screen Actors Guild Award for outstanding performance by a male actor in a supporting role.
So if we synthesize all these elements, the meticulous design mandate, the innovative simultaneous production model in New Zealand, the 6 weeks of concerted effort to create genuine ensemble chemistry,
the groundbreaking motion capture techniques, and the immediate global box office records, what we see is a film that accomplished something genuinely rare.
It didn't just faithfully adapt a beloved book, it fundamentally changed industry standards for producing large-scale epics.
It proved the enormous box office potential of the high fantasy genre when executed with absolute commitment to quality and scale. The entire industry learned lessons from the Fellowship of the Ring.
Lessons about ensemble casting commitment, digital effects integration, and simultaneous large-scale production. And that legacy was instantaneous. The sheer speed with which this film broke records and accumulated cultural relevance is perhaps the most astonishing element of its story.
Which leads us to the final provocative thought for you, the listener. Peter Jackson based this first film largely on Tolkien's first volume, but he released it knowing the sequels were already filmed and edited.
He knew the whole story was in the can.
So what does it truly mean for modern filmmaking when a project's legacy, Its box office dominance, its shattering of digital marketing records, and its critical acclaim is
Yeah.
so immediate that it's already considered one of the greatest films of its century and setting all-time records before the entire saga is even completed and released.
It created a future legacy in real time.
That anticipation, built upon a foundation of unparalleled production quality and technical dedication, meant that the conclusion of the story was practically guaranteed a place in history before the final credits of the final film ever rolled.
Thanks for listening.